Welcome, 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 welcome. Gotta change the info on Twitch so that it's updated correctly. But for anyone that is just, what's up, Simon? Anyone just coming in, it is Friday. So for anyone that's been paying attention to my Twitch, that's only existed for like, I don't know, like 9 days or something, at least in a real way. On Fridays, we read poetry. So let me pull up the rest of the poems. I don't actually know if this is gonna like update my information in the way that I wanted it to, because it seems like it didn't actually do that last week. Or not even last week, literally last night. So anyway, here's me. Let me pull up TikTok can't see. I can't decide. I think I'm probably gonna keep it right here actually for when I pull up the work, because that's gonna be the focus. That's how I did it last week, and I think that's what will be most beneficial. So let me pull up the other document. Oh, cool. Okay, nice. Yes, yes. Yeah, both works, but I think it makes more sense for folks to probably see just from at least the text when I'm reading specifically the poems themselves. So welcome to any folks just coming in. I already read, let me see. Yeah, I read one of those already. All right. So, how's everyone doing? Hopefully good. Hopefully having a good Friday. I finally picked up on reading, or not reading, watching the rest of the Queer Ultimatum season. So that's what I've been doing all day, basically, other than just like chilling out. Lambically? What's that? Why isn't this showing up, actually? It should be showing up the Safari window, but it doesn't look like it is. Okay. Works that way, looks like. All right, so for anyone that was here last Friday, you already know the drill. But for anyone that's just iambic, I can never say pentameter. Yeah, iambic pentameter. Perhaps I am honestly, I'm not a classically trained poet, so I'm like pretty like ignorant when it comes down to like knowing poetry language. But all I know is I write my poems hella thin, and I've been doing that since like 2016. So all goes according to plan. Let me grab some lo-fi just because I like the vibe of that. And then we'll get into talking about some poems and reading some poems. I know anyone on Twitch, when I turn the lo-fi on, because of the sound, like the filter for background noise that I have, it sounds kind of funky. Like it's like it basically drowns out a lot of what the lo-fi is. So sorry you're not getting exactly the experience you may want from that, but maybe you like the strange sounds that it evokes. I don't know. All right, so like I said, though, in accordance with my finally catching up, at least almost all of the queer season of Ultimatum, I figured I would read a bunch of poems about like love and COVID and just like my own experiences of, as I talked about last week, what's up, Dookie Mookie? I'll just pretend it is part of the beats. That's a good idea. I wrote a fuck ton of work in like the early years of COVID that were about exactly this. Cause like, of course, here, I'll turn this while I'm just at least talking about it. So, as anyone that's ever seen my content knows, but also just anyone that's heard me talk about any of my work, I basically I just have written a lot of work academically and creatively about like love and intimacy and just the difficulties of that, especially in the COVID era, and that's what my book is extending. So, oh, nice. Okay, yeah, good idea. Cooking and dishes. Like I said, sometimes it's just a good body double, if anything. So that's what I have for you tonight, is just a collection of some of those that were published that I wrote early years of COVID. The first one is in a magazine from KGB Bartlett, if anyone knows what that is. I learned about it actually from the very first person that I talked to about the fact that I'm late in life realized autistic. Like, they were the first person I ever talked to about it. Their name's Amy. And I just like ran into them like on Twitter. But they were like, "Oh, I'm reading some poetry on their like virtual poetry night, and I think you would be into it." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely, yes." So I went to that, and eventually I decided to finally submit some work, and I submit these six poems, and they're in there now. So the first one is called "We Are All Surfaces in the Environment." So anyone that already has heard me talk about my work knows that basically I created this punny word. Oh, also, thanks for the follow. Let me see who that is. Too late to get a good username. What, I think that's a great username for what it's worth. Oh, really? Huh. Well, I'm glad that you found your way, even if it was difficult. I put the username like between, at least for if you're pointing at me, or if the camera is pointed at people on TikTok, you can like see it. But then the it's also linked in my bio, so hopefully that was at least a way that you eventually found through the forest of difficulty. But like I said, the term environment is something that I created in early COVID. And as you might, as anyone that's a fan of puns probably already knows, it's just the word environment plus virus and the way that basically the landscape has changed since COVID started. So this is like the first place where I like ever actually published that idea. And then I've expanded on it like ever since basically. But like I said, the first one is very much blending the idea of like love that you're not supposed to have. And actually in early years of COVID, I had like I was living in this super old house that odds are good realistically did have mold problems, so there's a mention of that. I can't decide where to point TikTok. Like I said, the better view overall is on Twitch because you can see both my goofy ass and the poem, but anyway, I learned a great deal living in this old house, having to try to use home remedies to get rid of mold. And I was thinking about just like, as often autists talk about, like the intense experience of love, especially like love that maybe isn't something that could actually be experienced like in a reciprocal but especially COVID kind of sense, and like the yearning that goes on, and just like the general like new early throes of isolation that COVID I think brought onto all of us in different ways. So anyway, that's a little background on it, but I'll just get into it. So let me move TikTok over. So we are all surfaces in the environment. My love hangs around like mold. I infiltrate your porous wood, sink into your remembrance. Don't mind me, just evading lapses to rid your infrastructure of me, fortifying myself stronger than ever inside you. I am the 20% that know how to survive your vinegar. Undetected, I cunningly curb your interest till you're cupping at the seams. Curve for me. Show me how your heat that grows me cannot contain itself there inside your surfaces. Allow me to snake through your veins like water, weaving through your textures, tainting your wood boards, inking them with life. Isn't it all so exhilarating? How even my most toxic release of spores beats the drone of your tidy, polished home. So yeah, like I said, I think like basically every, whether it's any kind of poet or artist, I think I've spent a lot of time both being unhealthy, but also channeling that into my artistic work. I don't know exactly. I'm trying to be appropriate, but also nice to myself in hindsight. So I think that's what a lot of my early years of COVID were me just processing that. Because, like I said, I was finishing a PhD, writing about intimacy and sexual ecologies and relationships, and unfortunately, just like incredibly emotionally unavailable. But at the same time, dealing with like what it means to process all of that at the same time. And in this new era where like we're all incredibly isolated, but still going to be experiencing like the difficulty and trauma and emotional realities of what's happening. So, but I don't know if you all know like that line about vinegar. So, apparently there's certain types of mold that can survive vinegar. It's like they've adapted. And I thought that that was kind of funny and realistic about the way that like it's not even like anything when I write poems like this is even for anyone else. Like, because I doubt even the person that I wrote it about probably never even heard it. I have no idea. There's no way for me to know, I guess. But I think there's something really important. Even if, like, you're in a relationship that shouldn't actually be in whatever capacity that is, like, writing that out and, like, seeing what that can mean about the stages of your life and who you've been. So that's why I, despite maybe against public reputation, decided to publish that anyway. The next one is called I've Been Waiting. So, like I said, I don't know if we have any fans of Muppet Treasure Island in the house, in the virtual house, but that's what I was on. Like, I've watched Muppet Treasure Island like probably hundreds of times, and this is like really what I was getting at. There's that one scene, obviously, where they're talking about cabin fever. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? I've got cabin fever. I wish we could just technically play the song. I think that would be a little much though, but hopefully y'all know what I'm talking about with that. But this next one is, again, it's just about early years of COVID and the difficulty of like missing someone, but knowing that like, especially then, it wasn't safe because we knew so little about it. That like the idea of being able to see anyone in a literal sense, but also in the use of analogy, like see, you're just kind of waiting in your own like isolation and loneliness. But like again, what does that mean for relationships overall? Like how is that stuck with us, and like what can we gain from reflecting on that time? So like I said, this is called I Have Been Waiting. I have been waiting on the ocean of missing you for so long. I'm getting scurvy over here. I have the cabin fever of missing you. The creatures of us live on in the deepest parts of my memories. Not a day goes by I don't hold my breath to dive back in and pull them out, basking them in the sun of mine's surface. Our sea monsters shine brightly when allowed in daylight. I'm keeping the map, charting course to our buried treasures. I haven't forgotten where X marked our spots so many times. So like I said, that's all just like, it's like that moment. I used to spend a lot of time writing, and I'm gonna turn just so TikTok can also see it. But for me, it's like, it's that moment before you're going to sleep. And I know a lot of poets and just creatives broadly talk about that space, but like, that's where I feel like in the early years of COVID was a huge like, it was like, oh great, I guess I got to deal with my own memories again. like there was truly no escape. And we talked about this last week, I know, a little bit. Some folks were brave enough to admit that they related to that kind of experience in early years, as torturing but also useful as it is in hindsight. It's definitely something that for me in the early years was like, oh God, like, hey, Bird, you've probably not been the best you could be. And let's think about all of the like impossible impossibilities of any healthy relationship because of both my own emotional unavailability, but also like the difficulty, especially as a late in life queer person and autist, that has like always fallen prey to like the like cis heteronormativity of relationships. Like again, it's wild to think about as someone who's just finishing the new season of The Queer Ultimatum, that that's like the very first reality TV show that's queer that I've ever seen. I think that's the very someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the very first reality love TV show that is queer? Because I feel like it might be. I've never seen one before if another one exists. At least on such a big scale. And like that in itself, even though of course reality TV doesn't like it's not the keeper of all media or all norms, but it would speak volumes if that's the very first one. And I think that that is a perfect like that's a perfect case example for like just the general millennial experience. I was talking about that with a friend of mine just like last week too. Like I think it's especially weird. It's hard enough even if you're not an autist, late in life realized, to just like be grappling with being a queer person and like recognizing that like especially in such a violent relational landscape, like what relationships was I playing into the performance of cis heteronormativity and which ones were genuine? Especially because we're also immersed into this like landscape of like, okay, monogamous love, it's the best thing that there could possibly be, and let me grasp towards it. Like, I think artists, and I'm sure that there's queer artists that talk at great length about them, but I haven't really seen them. I bet that there's a lot more work about the way that especially like assigned female at birth folks almost like learn to dance in a romanticized cis heterosexist idea that like we may or may not in reality want to be a part of. And I think that that's what I am with writing my neuroqueer self-realizations in the algorithmic age book. That's more of what I'm going to address also. Because I wonder now, especially looking back at all of these poems, like and knowing how isolated I was in early years of COVID, like how much of that did I actually like was I actually just doing to fill my time? Like and it's weird to even admit that, you know, but I think it's true. I really think it's true. Thinking about like so much of my early years is especially not knowing and not having any language for knowing that I was non-binary and not being able to admit that I was queer because so much homophobia, so much transphobia, how much I have my whole life had to play into this concept that I like had a crush on someone that of the opposite sex, as if like the binary exists, as if there's opposites for real. And I really truly spent an exceptional amount of time, like as much as masking anything else, I've spent an incredible amount of time pretending that I had a crush on someone that in hindsight I don't think I actually had any feelings for because I was just keeping up appearances. I think there's a lot to that, that a lot of late in life realized autists and queer folks, so neuroqueer folks, are gonna be talking about and thinking about. And I'm excited to see those conversations and like be a part of like maybe some early art that addresses that. But in this, it's kind of like as many I think proper poets talk about. That's the kind of story that exists within these poems between the lines because I don't say it explicitly. There's something too, I think, also just like a romanticized infatuation. Like I wonder, especially with just the complexities of like sexuality versus romance. Like there's nothing invalid per se about just experiencing infatuation, even if it's something that you may not want. Do you know what I mean? Like in the sense of like you can experience the throes of infatuation, even if it's just fully being informed by cis heterosexism or a concept of love that in if it actually came to fruition you wouldn't enjoy. I think there's a lot more of that happening than we usually articulate. So consider that while I'm reading this next one, because all these six that are published in KGB, they're all about that. they're all in the same time period. Because I almost wrote at least a poem every night, basically, during the time when these were being written. So the next one is called Baldilocks Bumbler Virtuoso. It's there was a period of time in my late 20s where I was like going through that experience, I think, of just like chasing after emotionally unavailable men. And so that's what that poem, that title is really about. What's up, Lady Fox? Welcome, welcome. So again, everything what I just said, like keep that in mind as I'm reading this next piece. Let me turn TikTok so that you can see it. Okay. Oh, and again, just a reminder, if you go over to my Twitch, there is live captions that are being populated as well. You can see it's all populated here in this box. So if you could also, if you would prefer that or if you would benefit from it, that's definitely available. Okay. Watch me blow thought bubbles into our Ruspaso ship. Since you shut your electricity off, the pixels of me still spend all their tokens and free time grinding, bouncing, and reflecting in our lights. A play place despised, I backstroke in the ball pit full of our gazes into each other. Though you stopped paying admission, the bare moments of us still dance encased in their abandoned theme park. Turns out, the space was always self-sufficient. The show must go on. I'm going to turn TikTok again. So, to just kind of like expand on the idea of what I was just getting into, like what I think that poem does in a way differently from the one before it is it kind of acknowledges that, like, especially again in the early years of COVID, where especially anyone living alone was just kind of left with their thoughts, just kind of thinking about previous experiences and like the ways that we just kind of regain or retain a sense of like having a joy for life, or just like when you're sat with your thoughts that long, like what comes from it, what makes you feel, and I think that for anyone that does process through writing broadly, that's really what that is speaking to. It's like, okay, so how much of my feeling, especially if it can't actually be experienced with another person, if I can express it through writing, that's kind of its own form of intimacy that doesn't necessarily even involve anyone at all. Like, I don't know, I feel like I haven't read anywhere near enough work about like just like singleness and like infatuation. And I think that there's something really cool to talk about there. Like the way that whether it can be used as like an artistic muse or like, especially again in like the difficulty of knowing the difference between someone who is expected to like fall into a cis hetero relationship. Like if you've done that your whole life and you get used to like the feeling of what that feels like, even though it might not be something you want. Like what I mean is, especially for autists, like we have a tendency to feel, I mean, many of us, not all of us, of course, because nothing autistic is ever universal like anything else. But for me, I should say, I have hyper empathy. So that means like if I have like an experience of a feeling, because of that paired with my interoception issues, it makes it difficult for me to know like whether or not I'm actually attracted to someone or if I'm just really like sensory overstimulated because maybe they make me anxious. And that's another thing I'm hoping to hash out more in the book. Like what I mean by that is if you've lived a whole life of cis heteronormativity and you have to go through the motions of performing attraction to someone that you probably aren't even attracted to, And you're also in a landscape that's so violent. So the same person or people that you have to pretend like you're attracted to is actually violent to you, and you have experiences of violence, even though, of course, that doesn't mean every person in that group is violent, as if I need to say that anymore. But what I mean to say is that that puts you into an impossible conundrum of having to perform attraction to people that you're not, having experienced violence from that exact same group, and then that kind of, especially as an autist, totally fucks up your ability to like understand what it means to feel something in a moment. Because you, especially if you have interoception issues, you have difficulty hashing out what you're feeling in any given moment. Anxiety can feel like infatuation. And I'm glad to see that, especially the creator on TikTok, the starving autist, talks at length about that, or I've seen them at least dance around and talk about different stuff related to this, like what it means if you have a difficulty determining if you're attracted to someone, because it's hard enough, even as for neurotypical people to determine what type of attraction, right? There's so many ways to be attracted to people. And like what I mean is of course, you can be romantically attracted to people, you can be intellectually attracted, you can be sexually attracted, but there's also like plenty of others. And there's so many different forms of like being in a relationship, or like, some people are only sexually attracted if they're emotionally attracted first, etc., 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 and so many more. Infinitely more than my memory has capacity for at the moment. And like we don't really talk about it, which is wild, like because it's just not allowed, I guess, so they say. And especially for millennials, that's a hard thing to grapple with, because as progressive as the society has become nowadays, it doesn't make our lifetimes of that difficulty and that shame and that sheltering any less real. So, we can be grateful, we can like explore, but COVID doesn't let us do that anymore, really, unless we're in an area where maybe we have a safe queer bubble, or I don't know. So anyway, that's to say that this kind of thing, it's like if you've pretended or performed that for most of your life, and then you're just in early years of COVID left only with time to reflect on that, it just kind of puts into perspective, like, okay, what do I actually want? And I've gotten so used to playing out this infatuation that it almost doesn't even need me anymore. Because it's just so, I've become a master at it at this point. And it almost becomes its own performance. And I think really, if I'm being honest, that's what a lot of my early COVID poetry is. It's just a performance of cis heteronormativity that I've become really good at. And it also, in hindsight again, reflected a lot on the way that like I used to exist in like hole in the wall bars too. Here, I'm gonna continue that. I think people are trying to make sense of those feelings, especially when told you're not allowed to. Exactly, yeah. And for me, like I've had horoscope readers read my like chart, and I don't know anything about that really, besides some basics, but like a few people when they look at my chart will be like, what do you do about something something something, and I'm like, I write poetry about it. Like I don't know what else can I do. It's basically, they say it's like, I don't know, something in the 12th house. I don't fucking know, and maybe someone here knows a lot more about horoscopes than I do, but like that's truly the only way I've ever known how to process that kind of stuff. And I think, yeah, like I said, I'm just looking forward to like seeing the kind of work that will come out to discuss these things, especially with the communities on TikTok, talking about how many folks are autistic but also not cis, how many folks are autistic and just queer in general. I think that there's a lot to be talking about that I have yet to, like, I've seen like simmerings of it, but nothing like full-fledged that I'm like really looking forward to. And I hope that, like I said, whether it's my poetry or the book that I'm gonna puke out this summer, it'll start that a little bit, I think. So, continuing the theme, the next poem is called I'm Here Too. Another early years of COVID poem about infatuation. It has more to do with masks, but like physical masks, not even, I mean, autism masking is of course also always a theme, but this one specifically more about like the experience of co-presence in person and like the difference of either being super isolated in comparison or just like if you, especially as an autist, have like a really intense experience of being in person that's circulated around eye contact and like seeing people's smiles and stuff, and then you're suddenly thrown into isolation, the yearning of that, and like the loss, but also like the memories. And it was weird because before I decided to read these tonight, like rereading this, even like a year and a half later, I think, it was weird because I think I'm realizing that actually have almost forgotten what that's like at all, which is like, that's like a lot. That's a lot to think about. Like, because it's just been so long. But anyway, like I said, this is called I'm Here To. I'm here to fetishize the face. Face it, I did not miss any but yours. Take off that mask slowly for me. No need to be shy or coy. I know what's under there. I've seen it all before. Show me again how you. It's been so long since anyone worth looking at has looked at me, physically, viscerally, in my direction. Before our total dark, I mourned our sight loss like I had my childhood dog. I knew we were going, so I read books in place of your face to supplant our deterioration. I wrapped myself in the comfort of fiction between covers and frayed spines. Shipping is delayed on shared smirks in the unforeseeable future. In this environment, we are flesh and thus fresh out of knowing glances. I see now there is no way to properly grieve the relishment of your idiosyncrasies, as we are relegated to only a pastime. Yes, I was so thrown off on how much I lost from my day-to-day routines and interactions with people. I was relieved that I didn't have to mask yet miss those little interactions. Exactly, yeah. I mean, and as you saw, it was like what I was really trying to speak to there was like those little moments where like you feel like the intensity of presence with someone. And I feel like actually maybe I won't move it back. We'll move it over here again. People on Twitch are probably confused, but I'm moving TikTok so that TikTok can like see a specific view. But anyway, I feel I've been very lucky in my life, to be honest. Like before COVID started, to have had a number of relationships where I feel like I had a really like profound connection with someone. And even like as someone that didn't know they were autistic, like I don't know how more or less special that is, or what meaning that actually has, because of course, like attraction and connection are something that's ultimately experienced by each individual differently. Like, of course, that's why you can have intense feelings for someone, but they wouldn't have for you back. That's just kind of how it goes. Like, the idea of like perfect communication and perfect attraction are ultimately something that's more of a myth than like a regular thing. So, anyway, that is to say that I think that there was something really interesting for me as someone that studies intimacy and relationships and being so isolated and writing a dissertation about exactly that. Because like it made me reflect on the importance of having those little things that I associated with getting to know someone deeply because I had to as an autist, right? I had to meticulously in hindsight, and again, I didn't know this when I decided to write this dissertation in the beginning, that I'm an autist and that I've had to meticulously look at people's faces and associate those little idiosyncrasies about the way that like a minute aspect of their face changing, I associated that with who they are, right? Like the way that like it's just like the little micro movements that like non-autistics probably broad sweeping statement claim we can't detect. I had to learn those meticulously. And even though that was a labor for me, that was an ultimately extensive lifelong lesson. Like, I now notice the absence of that extensively, especially, and as I was talking about this with another friend the other day, it's weird that now, for the first time in my whole life, after living a life of having to go around and learn what every single little aspect of someone's face might mean, that the majority of people that I interact with is actually through text, so I never have to do that anymore. Like, how do I grapple with that as a late in life realized autist? Because I became so used to getting overstimulated and having to meticulously get to know people by looking at their face, and probably still failing at understanding what they feel or mean, because you can't actually look at someone and know. We're not mind readers, no matter how hypervigilant, no matter how good at reading someone's facial expressions. So it's weird to think about it now. It's weird to think about, like, how many people I speak to almost primarily through text. While, of course, just like this, like whether it's through my TikTok content or something like this, where y'all can see me and I'm not seeing you back. Like, it says a lot about, like, so many of our relationships, I think, especially since COVID started. Like, it's fascinating to think about. It's just as profound as the change and the introduction of the telephone. And, like, John Durham Peters talks about in the book Speaking into the Air, the way that when people first were introduced to the telephone, they treated it like it was some sort of supernatural phenomena because it was the first time the voice was disconnected from the body. Like, this is very much a different phenomena of that is different, and it's very, I think that there's a lot to be said about it. So I'm gonna get into that too. But I think it's funny to think about, like, especially how many people, and maybe, I don't know if y'all are still regularly masking, like, as in physically on face mask or what, especially those of you that may be in the East Coast. But think about how if you've always worn a mask in public, how many people met you with a mask on and didn't actually know what your face looked like. Like, that's wild. That's something that could happen. That's, I mean, there were plenty of people that, especially when I still lived in the apartment complex that I did, like when I was writing my dissertation, there are baristas that have no idea what my face looks like. And I would see them multiple times a week. They have no idea. Like, they knew what my eyes looked like with these glasses on, but they had no idea what this part of my face looked like. And they may never know. And that's just how it is. And there's plenty of people like that nowadays. Like, again, we can't, I mean, what does it actually say about someone if you can see their smile? For most of human history, we've presumed a lot. We've presumed that it means people understand that we're friendly. I also wonder that, like, okay, this is another thing, and I'll just say this and then we'll get into the next poem. Like, so the last year of me teaching in person again, since COVID started, I've had students that have never seen the bottom of my face. They've, during my classes, they haven't seen my face, which is so weird. I mean, they would see it if I, like, you know, went outside and, like, took my mask off to, like, drink a coffee and some water between classes, and if they just happened to come by. But otherwise, they didn't see my face. Not during a single lecture for 16 whole weeks. 2 semesters of that. That's unreal. Look at, I made the stickers bigger. I figured it out. Thank you, Ed. I worked with people for months or years before they knew what I looked like. Exactly. That is a difference. That is a difference that makes a difference. It's a wild difference that we don't talk about enough. And then I get it. A lot of people aren't masking anymore. So it's like, maybe people don't want to deal with it. Maybe they don't want to think about the difference that made. But it did. And it still does for those of us that do. I haven't built a connection with anyone who masks. I still mask everywhere. Oh, for sure. That's got to be really hard. I mean, I get that in, like, a local way. Like, I know maybe one other person in my general vicinity that regularly masks. They're another faculty member that's, like, a VAP. But yeah, I get that. I also fixed the other stickers, the ones that had the background that I thought didn't, and I added sounds to them. When I fixed it all, I was like, we're gonna add sounds. All right. The next one, let me scroll down.
Look at me.
You like that? I recorded that. I tried to get it as close to the original video as I could. So the next one is called You Were Not Routine Dental Work. I wrote this before hospitals and medical professionals just in general like stopped masking. So it takes on, I think, an even more ridiculous meaning nowadays, ever since they don't anymore. But let's get into it. It's just, like I said, another infatuation poem. So it goes like this. Oh, let me move it so TikTok can see. All right, you are not routine dental work. The worst part of losing you is that you were not routine dental work. Not some superficial filling I could replace. You were that real enamel deal. Over the years, I developed quite the sweet tooth, taking bigger bites than I could chew. I ached from your erosion for months, numbing myself preemptively for your extraction. You didn't leave a minor cavity. I required a full-blown root canal. My nerves laid raw and the deepest parts of me from your loss. You were ripped from my mouth and placed back into that of another. I have no right to be sad, only sad rights, gumming at our leftovers. I'm a big fan of puns, especially any double meaning word puns I can throw in the poetry. They're going in there as soon as I think of them. Nice. There's a good 5-second delay from when I press the button to when it shows up. I don't know if that's good or bad. Oh, okay, yeah, because it was a little bit later than okay. You got me to drink water twice, so honestly, it's for the best. Thanks. Oh, good. Even TikTok could see that one. I like that you said it just slaps them on wherever. Like, so basically, I tried to, like, it's weird because on whatever, like, widget that you add the stickers with, it's like basically it'll go anywhere in this general vicinity. Because it's like a square that doesn't actually fit up to, like, my screen for some reason. I don't know. You would think that they would have made it, like, the typical size, but I guess not. But yeah, anyway. I don't know how many of you know know stuff about dental work. There was a time there, so like before COVID actually happened, oddly enough, I went to the dentist finally for the first time in like 6 years or something because I actually like realized I could get on Medicaid. So I went. And I luckily didn't have any cavities, which is kind of miraculous. So when I was a kid, I used to get like cavities all the fucking time. And for those of you that don't know, like, do you ever, I mean, well, at least maybe you've never thought about it, or maybe you have, about dental work. It's super weird to think about, like, that we just got a bunch of bones in our mouths, and sometimes if shit goes awry, we just get, like, holes in our tooths all the way down to our nerves. Like, that shit's weird. That's weird to think about, right? I feel like, especially now, like, with how much we know about the true damage to our entire bodies that dental work improperly or just not getting dental work can do to us. Like if you know, of course, if you get in a cavity and it goes for too long and gets infected, it can literally like kill you, which is like I didn't know that until like a couple of years ago, but it's wild to think about that in the new age, right? Like a part of us that feels so like I mean we take it for granted ultimately until shit gets like really painful, and that's some of the most serious pain I've ever experienced. I don't know about y'all. I guess I'm fortunate in that, but I remember when I had to get my bottom wisdom teeth out in like my mid 20s. I was like, oh fuck, this was terrible. Like this was actually awful. It was like the closest to torture I think I could imagine. Yeah, it's excruciating shit. Like, because basically, and again, it's something I didn't think about until this happened. But it's wild to think about, like, we just got all these healthy bacteria hanging out all over us all the time. And it's easy for us to forget that it's like also in our mouth. Like, so when a wisdom tooth comes in, right? All the surfaces that were covered with healthy bacteria are now like it's like they're new and there's suddenly a new surface that like shit can attack and your body's like, oh god. So that's why usually if wisdom teeth are coming in, that's actually what hurts, is just your body freaking out because it's a new surface. And it's like being invaded. So it's like I mean, other than obviously if it's like pushing on some shit or whatever, other than the scraping they do, the money that I still have to pay to that my insurance won't cover. Yeah. I mean, and that's another thing. Obviously, it's a whole other issue, not just in the COVID era, but just like in the US health insurance market. Like what a fucking nightmare. Like I haven't been to the dentist since COVID started. I don't know when I'll go. Like honestly, with just everything that's happening. I don't know. I mean, unless obviously actually, I thought that I never got my top two wisdom teeth out. They never like ended up growing in, or like when I saw the x-rays to get my bottom two out, they were like, "Well, we'll just wait to see. We'll wait to see if it becomes like a problem." And it never did, but then like a few months ago, actually the same month that I moved, so just like less than a month ago, I thought that I might have to go to the dentist. And I just like did everything I possibly could. Like home remedy, like true proud gypsy shit, where I like tried to just like salt water rinse, and like I considered pulling out some clover, like all the shit that the internet's like, if you can't afford anything, as most of us can't nowadays, this is the shit to do. And luckily it went away because it's scary. Storybots has a little scene exposing the importance of dental hygiene. Oh, really? Well, exposing or explaining, I guess. Both of those work. Yeah, I don't know. I always remembered, as I've seen a few people say, I always remember dentists wearing masks during the dental work, but I guess nowadays they're being just as unmasked as any other medical professional. So that's kind of alarming, but what can you do? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think the only other thing that I didn't already mention about that last one is just like it's interesting how every time you like meet someone and have like a really intense connection, it feels like it's like you'll never be able to fill that void. And yeah, I don't know. I think I spent a lot of time in early years of COVID like thinking about that. It's weird how like, people always say that it's like, okay, all in good time. It'll pass. And it's like, yeah, sometimes that's true. The last one that I had published in this magazine is called The Baby. So I don't really want kids. I never have wanted kids, which I guess makes me a strange assigned female at birth person. I don't know. So this one is about writing and just like any kind of written work being my babies. It's kind of short, but it goes like this. The baby words in my brain are crying out of me. They say it's time for them to be birthed out from my mental holes and into the world. Words have no need for sucking their thumbs to self-soothe. They are the food and the shit, and we are the worms. I really like that one. It's weird for me to think about like how much my sister like always wanted kids and now has like seven, and like always played with Barbies and shit, like growing up, and I just never wanted that. Like I would, and it's hilarious because I would be the like little sister. Like I said this a few streams ago, but like my sister's 11 years older than me and like the exact opposite of who I am. And like what we did with Barbies truly exemplifies our differences. Like she would play house and like dress them up in clothes and like, do house stuff. And then I would like take them and take off their clothes and cut their hair off. Like that was like that was what we did. It's perfect. Also, anyone on Twitch can appreciate the picture that I had professionally taken when I was like just a PhD candidate still. It was like right after I like submit my dissertation prospectus, which is like the proposal for my dissertation, was when I had these published. So it still says I'm at Bowling Green and like I'm a PhD candidate. But that's me without bangs. There I am in all my glory. All right. It's fun to like revisit these because I haven't, like I said, until I like was looking and watching the Queer Ultimatum season, I really hadn't thought about these poems in particular for a while. And like it really just felt so permanent when I was writing them. And it's weird like going back to them now, you know? I'm trying to think. There was another one actually that's in a different, let me see. It's in a different folder from this one because I know I want to read this one that's up on the screen. Actually, Twitch, you probably can't see it right now because I gotta change it into Adobe. But TikTok, you're seeing behind the curtain into my my horrifically organized files. Where is it? I think this is where I put them. 19.1. Oh, here we go. All right. Let me switch over to Adobe. Oh, nice. Even just the... You get to see the proofs. Okay, let me switch this. I think I'm just going to do two more. So the first one, if I remember correctly, is about more relationships, but it's kind of like a precursor to the ones I just read, actually. Like more of like a going back in time. So these are the proofs. I know Twitch can see it. I'm gonna like shift it because it looks like it's in like a strange corner. Actually, I'm probably gonna read both of those. I forget that this one was first. I was gonna read the second one. Oh, that's the wrong one. It's in a Word document. All right, so the first one, this one I published even earlier than the last one I was just talking about. It's called Selfish Friend Request Sent. Again, very millennial, very much about just like relationships and different types. Friendship that kind of blurs the lines of whether or not it's going to become something more romantic, and a relatively short, but it goes like this. My favorite contact in a box of spam. Reach out to me like your email is being deactivated tomorrow. Because we both know it will be tomorrow. Stick out your technological palm and touch my frantic typing fingertips. Don't pull the plug on your glass surface until I fall asleep, disconnecting me from your grid. So like I said, oh good, you did see the bottom. So for some reason in my like mid to late 20s, I spent a lot of time chasing infatuated with emotionally unavailable men. And this was one of those. There's something about like Gen X men, they love emailing. That's their thing. They love emailing you. And so that's what that was about. The next one I think kind of builds off of it on the same idea. It's called Settling in White America. This poem, if I'm being honest, like perfectly pairs with the one that or that the article that I have coming out about Kara's extension of whiteness. I think it talks about different elements of the same landscape. So I'm going to read this, and then I think I'm actually going to read that abstract one more time, just so everyone can like see if maybe you didn't see it last time. So anyway, this is Settling in White America. I think it kind of explains itself. All across white middle America, there are the fathers. There they are, tucked away in their garages, hiding in their spaces lined with plywood, hiding in their spaces armed with power tools. What can I build to keep occupied, keep from thinking, keep from reflecting on the current boredom of my life? They sulk in their garages, escaping their wives. The women they choose to die with. She makes his meals, she excuses him. She has her space, perhaps a sewing room, a knitting corner, the kitchen. She makes for him, for the family. If only she could fill or cover up all this empty. Then they would be happy together. Decades of sitting parallel in separate chairs. Fill the space with tiny versions of themselves. Follow all the rules. Wheel of Fortune during dinner time. Dream of fortunes. Life would be so much better if we only won the lottery. We'd have enough money to have more spaces. Big, big spaces. We'd fill them with things to ignore each other, to fill in between the span of a settled life. So suburbia. I think I don't know about y'all. Like I said, I had boomer parents. At least one parent left, still boomer. My parents were 43 when they had me, a week apart birthdays. And it's just weird to think about, like, shortly before my mom passed, she was like, if I didn't have to, I don't think I would have stayed with your father. And I was like, fair enough. Because again, as I said, and I've said probably a few times, but it always bears repeating. Like, it's just the amount of financial dependence that boomer, like, assigned female at birth folks had. It's unmatchable. Like, they truly didn't have a choice. Because they couldn't even open a bank account on their own until they were in their 20s. And many of them were already married at that point. Or at least, like, still in a society that even if it became legal, wouldn't allow them to have the financial independence that they would need, even if they could have their own bank account. Because if you're taught from birth that you're not going to attain anything for yourself, if you've already gotten to that point and you're in your 20s now and you can open your own bank account, odds are good you're not prepared for it. Like, you've already been socialized into a stance of passivity and dependence. My mom always said she never was taught to succeed in school. Like, I remember looking at her report cards from, like, the literal 40s or 50s. And, like, it reflects that. I mean, she was taught that it didn't matter. Because it didn't. Like, what do we expect? And that was, like, again, it was a second ago. And people act like it wasn't. And even my mom, like a couple generations Roma, white presenting, assimilating into whiteness, didn't stand a chance. Like, so how could anyone infinitely more disenfranchised? I mean, my mom was poor. Like, she didn't know where her next meal was coming from growing up. But she married my dad because she needed to. Like, I mean, but I guess now that I think about it, though, there was a point at which even if after she got into a career that paid her enough, she ended up leaving it when she got married because that was what she was expected to do. Like, she talked numerous times about, like, how much she could have excelled in her career if she wasn't pressured to not. Even her best friend, who did do that, who got married and then became, like, a housewife and had kiddos and stuff. No shade, of course, to anyone that wants to do that. That's legit. Everyone can do that if they want to. But, like, my mom didn't really want to do that. She would have lived a totally different life, I think, if she was born into a world that was different. But it wasn't. It's the world that it was. And so that's really what that poem is about. Suburbia and that. I have a couple others about that, of course, because it informs so much of my early life in my Kindle, like Amazon Kindle books, micro poetry books. But yeah, I like that one. It's in Explorations in Media Ecology. And speaking of explorations in media ecology, the last one that I was going to read is related to this, but in a different way. I know, me too. Lady Fox said, I love how honest she was with you about that. The thing is like, my mom always had so much character. I mean, there's a reason why, like, I didn't know that gypsy is a slur. Because my mom was just always, like, shameless about it, as one should be. Because even obviously, if the world hates us, like, that doesn't mean we can't and shouldn't have pride in who we are. But I don't know, it's weird thinking about, like, especially near end of her life, like, being financially dependent on my dad and, like, knowing that, like, she was just given a shit hand and did the best that she could with it. Like, it's weird thinking about like how much everything is like that in our society institutionally, because like again, it's not just the most intimate relationships that are influenced by that dynamic. It's also all of politics, all of education, all of every institution, and that's really what informs like and inspires me to do the work that I am. So the last piece that I was going to read actually is about that. I didn't gather as many as I did last week, but let me shift it over so you can see it. I also published this in EAM. And I wrote this at as early years of COVID, I think, as well. I must have, because let me see. I published it. When was it? 2021, I think. Yeah, 2021. Oh, you know what? I was going to read that abstract, though, to pair with the last one, because I think it pairs well with both of them. So let me go back and open that up. I think it'll open in Adobe also. Where is it? Well, you know what? I'll just open it. Oh, wait, no, it's right here. All right, cool. So, like I said, yeah, 2020 did win. I think a lot of us are still recovering. But anyway, I think this one does a really good job of like pairing with what I just said. Because of course when we're talking about like the effects of white suburbia, obviously a lot of that is just, I mean, if not all of it, arguably, is a direct product of the white flight. So this I think does a good job of pairing with what I was really getting at, but just more of like an internal and then external landscape kind of way. So like I said, this is coming out in the next issue of EAM, Explorations in Media Ecology, but the paper is called Car as Extension of Whiteness, Not Everyone's Skin is Extended Equal. I don't think I explained this. Let me switch back over so y'all can see on TikTok. Or wait, I think I can just make it whiter. So for anyone that doesn't know, like why I would have named it that. Basically, Marshall McLuhan, who's like, you know, like I said, the big canon, the big academic daddy of media ecology. he's he's famous for making this claim that cars extended the skin, okay, as if it's like a form of clothing or something. But what I argue in the paper is that obviously, as the subtitle suggests, not everyone's skin was extended equal because the car to this day isn't accessible to everyone. It's mostly was just extended to white folks that then white flighted, right? So the abstract goes like this. The U.S. white flight left historically and intentionally targeted marginalized groups and cityscapes in the impoverished dust of public transport. These racialized phenomena restructured urban environments and deadened surrounding landscapes, engendering deliberately barren space too far to traverse by no and low-income feet. Now in the present COVID-19 environment, Midwest landscapes are an eyesore which perpetually disable and dehumanize, further denying working class folks from safe social distancing and PPE in areas already plagued with socio-historical and economic disenfranchisements. Meanwhile, redline and or gentrified affluent spaces remain composed of mostly whites of a certain status. This project explored present COVID-19 human implications of cars in a nation founded upon ecological devastations. So obviously that like it's one of those things that if you, oh wait, I guess I should probably just keep that. It's one of those things that like folks could easily brush off as if it's not interconnected, but like there's truly such an intimate and like interpersonal element to white supremacy that obviously, especially urban geographers don't necessarily discuss. And like, if we're going to actually have a comprehensive look from an interdisciplinary lens, it needs to address both the relational aspect of reinforcing what I call color paved racisms, because the nuclear family is like the heart of white supremacy ultimately. It is built into the landscape quite literally. And that's what the book is really talking about. Because when the white flight happened, white families, white nuclear families, cis heterosexual white families were the ones that were leaving. And that was the medium through which they generated the color paved racisms that changed and to this day change the landscape. Like that's really what gentrification is. It's a project of not just whiteness. It's also a project of monogamy and a claim to who is entitled to what space that has I mean not irreversible, but irreparable consequences in the material world. And so we need to talk about it that way, creatively and academically, and from an interdisciplinary lens that acknowledges like the ecological implications of those taken for granted things. So, with that said, the last one, and like the reason why I'm even doing work like that is because, as I've talked about a few times, the the field of media ecology is like any other, right? In academia, I mean, in that basically the canon has been disproportionately white cis dudes that are not disabled. And this is a poem that I wrote because the nice thing about it, despite the consequences of basically every academic field that there is because of deliberate monopolization of power, is that it actually publishes things like poetry. Like the reason why that's weird actually that I even like media ecology in a traditional sense is because they still do things that are traditionally not accepted by like more quote unquote elitist academics. Like even when white dudes do it, the field is still ousted as not being like professional enough. So then I come in, and I think oftentimes, understandably so, because of that skepticism and because of that ostracization, like folks that want to write in the field are like, what are you doing? They're not going to listen to us even more. And I'm like, okay, but they need to. Like, and I'm still going to say the things. So I wrote this poem about that. And it's called Transformative. And it goes like this. Beware me, I am a seer. I have seen things here I cannot unsee, and I will spell them all out. I see through your binding spells of warlocked pages, extinguishing gaslights effortlessly. I am Roma, infiltrating your Roman honorifics and dispelling your false gods, using only alphabet and goddesses. Sometimes I take form of a fairy tale, a crystal ball. Other times in omen, a pitchfork. I trained role-playing your games all my life for this moment. Fear me, for I am the seer. I defy your laws of autocorrect and spell check, perverting your own ancient arts against you. You have trafficked in women for so long, you mistake my partaking in rituals for subservience. I have taken good notes on your blind spots, ogres. You only believed yourself, Goliath. My incantations disman title. I take your Menage's pages, fashioning them into delicately relaced Versace dresses. He may have been a man of his time, but I am a woman of present and future tense. Mind you, I wrote that like a year before I started actually unpacking my gender. So I was still going by being a woman at the time that that was published, but I am in fact not binary. So, but yeah, I mean, I think I think that folks in the field have been have been welcoming and more open to the shit that I have to say than I expected them to be. I think that I think that the approach of media ecology, even in a traditional sense, is inviting to that because of that ostracization. But at the same time, just as like any academics I would expect do, they're often skeptical of any kind of critical lens because that's not what the focus is about, at least in a traditional sense. But thank you, Lady Fox. But yeah, I don't know if I don't think I've made any content about this or like talked about it on my TikTok at all, but for those of you that don't know, actually, I'm gonna pull up. Let's read the acknowledgments of to my dissertation because that's really what this speaks to. I wrote some shit in there that I think you're not usually supposed to, and that's why I did it. So let me pull that up. Let me see where I put it. I think I opened it recently to like reference something. Okay, so this will give a little bit of background on the poem that I just read. That I think will make more sense if someone doesn't exactly know what the fuck I was talking about. Okay. Hi, Twinkle. What are you doing? Twinkle is here to listen to the acknowledgments as well. Okay. Okay, so this is like, I guess, I've talked about this in so many words on TikTok, but not really. But anyway, this is what I said in my acknowledgments. First, thank you to Doctors Goodnight and Gelati for expediting me into the Purdue University Northwest Communication Master's Program after a few graduate courses as an undergrad, without either of which I would not have ever pursued graduate school. Also, many thanks to Dr. Arts for teaching me about industrialisms, neoliberalism, and the transnational capitalist class, which have heavily grounded how I have seen and done anything in my entire life differently in ways that do make differences. Third, thank you, Lauren Ezra Whitman, for casually recommending media ecology, only for me to dismiss it away, and to Dr. John Dowd for eventually explaining it to me in a way, time, and place that I was open to despite my initial reluctance. Thank you to the 2019 Media Ecology Association convention judges responsible for granting me the top convention paper award that year in Toronto, thus granting me my first journal publication in EAM. And very special thank yous to Drs. Carolyn Aronis, Julia Hildebrand, and Julia Richmond for assembling our first gender and media ecology panel at National Communication Association later that year, where I first previewed this project in a premature stage. I think many other people, and then I get to what I am actually reading this for. So I said, thank you to all those people who I have, and anyone I have not listed, who warmly welcomed me into the association and executive board, despite my having been sexually harassed by the last living member to work with McLuhan, requiring the then executive board members to respectively and promptly assemble the first MEA misconduct committee. So during my very first Media Ecology Association convention, I won their top convention paper for this paper that I wrote about Left Book, which is like those leftist Facebook groups. But then literally during a panel that I was attending by the quote unquote oldest living man to have worked with Marshall McLuhan, I was sexually harassed. Like openly during the thing. He like took my hand, made me super uncomfortable, told me that he loved me, like sent an email to me with that in writing. It was super uncomfortable, and I shouldn't have been put into a position like that as a graduate student. And it happens all too often in academia that shit like that happens without any consequences. But at the same time, despite all this happening, oof, yes, gay oof at that. By the way, happy ninth day of Gay Pride. Speaking of big gay oof. But yeah, I mean, despite that happening, the association has been open and was super supportive and promptly created the first ever committee to deal with something like that. So I only, despite the rocky start, have had like an incredibly supportive experience. despite that. Which is weird to think about, right? Like, which is also why, you know, I wrote that poem and it was published in their journal. That both those things together, like all of that, knowing all of that, it speaks volumes to to the respectability and like willingness to learn new things from a group of people that I've grown to absolutely adore. And I've only, in all my strange autistic ways of communicating and writing with critical lenses, like they've been incredibly kind. Like I can't be anything but thankful to them for that. But I wrote it into my acknowledgments because I think it's important to be real about the what goes on. And I it is a part of who I am. Like that was the same week that I met most of them. The week that they were like, "Hey, you're doing good work," was the same week that I was attacked by one of their, oldest living members to work with, McLuhan, bragging about it. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's a long way that academics need to go before they can do anything that would actually benefit like everyone, especially the most disenfranchised. But I think that seeing that response, it really speaks to like the possibilities that there are for academics that are willing to make changes. Because they could have easily done nothing. They could have just brushed it under the rug. And that's what happens to a lot of folks. Like I don't know if y'all are familiar with those documentaries, The Masks That We Wear. It's about like masculinity. It's by a sociologist by the name of Michael Kimmel. So for anyone that's unfamiliar with him, like I said, he's a masculinity scholar in sociology. But in recent years, in fact, I forget if it was 2018 or 19, shortly after Me Too happened, his graduate students wrote anonymous letters that he was attacking them. And it's like the kind of the open secret of academia is that basically there's just a lot of predatory behavior, especially by older male scholars. So that's the kind of shit that there's a lot needs to be done about internally with academia, much like a different version of the military. If anyone's familiar with the work being done about that, there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of whisper networks, a lot of just like, oh, don't work with them because they'll do this or whatever. And I think, I don't know, I was thinking about making a video about this earlier. Like, I think there's a lot that needs to be discussed more openly in regards to academia, because like undoubtedly it's an incredibly elitist institution, but like over the course of the last like 50 or 60 years it's changed dramatically, for better and for worse, mostly for worse if you if you ask me. Although of course if it was 60 years ago I never would have had a PhD at all, I never would have had the opportunity to. But the difficulty in what's happening, I'm going to try to discuss that a little bit. So, a couple streams ago, I talked about the fact that I don't think it's a coincidence that academia or just like getting formal education was suddenly made more accessible. So, like, able to be, achieved by anyone that isn't just an able-bodied white cis man. What's up, Cheever? At the same time that it suddenly became exceptionally more expensive and therefore not accessible. Right? Like we suddenly needed to be exceptionally profited off of. Like, as I'm often saying, I have $166,000 in student loan debt because I wanted to do this. And I'm by no means the exception. Like, I'm definitely the rule. Like, most people pursuing a PhD, the PhD itself is usually fully paid for. But, like, to get there, you probably still have about as much debt as I do, if not, like, at least 100 grand, And then coming out of it, because of the way education is corporatized, we're not getting paid. Like, I mean, 75% of us, they say, are adjuncts, which means, and many people don't know this, I don't think, we're not getting paid like anything. Like, I mean, we're getting paid probably 20 to 30K a year without health insurance benefits. And people don't know that. Like, I don't think the average person knows that, because there's still, I mean, even getting that is still an educational privilege, without a doubt. But I've been thinking about this more recently because it makes it really complicated then if people don't know that. Quit my job and come and live on Clubhouse. It's warm over there. I don't think so. I remember it being very cold over there last time I was there, so I don't think I will. But it makes it complicated to explain the way that education is corporatized and made anyone, even with like all the educational privileges in the world, only like the most privileged, the most Ivy League, the most probably born into generational wealth academics are even getting any job that can be secure. Like any tenure track job is basically going to those people now, which is of course the minority. It's like 2%, they say. So that means there's like the entire rest of us are basically getting paid nothing. And then, and this is why it's been on my mind, like, and how do we grapple with the fact then that if people don't know that, and we need to make sure that information is accessible to the public because of the paywalls, because of the fact that research and knowing how to research in like a thorough and credible way that isn't like going to be, I don't know, just fall into all of the problematic things that can happen if you don't research properly. The fact that that is a skill set. How do we actually help the public in the way that the public needs to be helped that have been kept from knowing any of that? Because it makes it almost impossible. And I'll expand on that whole. Ed said pretty soon Uber is going to start an educator for hire program. I mean, basically, like, I don't know. It seems like the tutor companies are exploiting it most nowadays in comparison to anything else. Like, what I mean by that is like, y'all gotta realize, and I talked about this on a post from someone who's like seeking out research assistants. Like, every bit of free labor I do, which includes basically almost all my content creation, is at the direct detriment of my ability to pay my bills and live in a house. And I mean that. I mean that completely. Like, there's a reason why, even though I don't regret sharing my information freely, because that's what should be done. It genuinely, me not putting a price tag on what I'm doing means now I'm at risk for eviction. Like, quite really. Like, and I think people don't know that. And how could they? How could they know that? Because they're being shielded from knowing that. It's Dr. Bird. It is Dr. Bird. But it's like, how do we, I don't know how we deal with the institutions of academia that have failed so many of us for so long and are now making it more and more impossible for even those of us that have all the educational privileges, all the researcher skills, all the practice with writing. I don't know how we shift so that the public is actually learning these things and learning more about the like exploitative nature of corporatized education, while also like learning that we can't be giving out all of our labor for free all the time. Like, we truly can't. We can't afford to. Like, because not only am I, like, I get paid, just full transparency, because that's what I'm all about. I get paid $42,000 a year, and I have $166,000 in student loan debt, which I'm luckily not paying back yet. But when I moved here, had to live off credit cards. So I'm in not only not getting paid enough, though, I'm getting paid like half of what I'm actually worth, if not 3 times less than what I'm worth. Because if anyone's checked last, they usually say that that's the amount that someone with a bachelor's gets paid. But I have the PhD level student loans. And then I have credit card debt. And I can't afford to do labor for free all the time. Like, I really can't. I already, like, I can't afford to like buy groceries. I'm for the rest of summer basically. Like but at the same time, that is, with all that said, I don't regret always sharing my research. I don't regret trying to give information to people because I know that that's what we all need. But at the same time, every single time I do, I'm then lowering my chances of being able to survive. And I think that that's a lot more academics than people realize. But we're still within a context that treats us as if like that doesn't exist and as if we're just entitled to share all of that anyway and then struggle and if not become houselessness. Or become houseless. Like, truly. I don't know how we deal with that. Because what makes this even more difficult, right, is that academics are trained to be professors, but the market of professoring isn't paying us. A cash sticker. Thanks for this cash stack for free. But truly, it's like everyone give Dr. Bird some money. I mean, I don't actually have to right now, but I mean, there's a reason why I'm fundraising for my book. Also, other than just because I wanna publish my book in a way that is affordable to people and also is like sent to the general audience. You know what I mean? Like, because I could, when I was first writing it, it didn't occur to me how much I need to make the book like a memoir, because I think that's what will actually benefit people the most. But it's of course going to be interwoven with academic work. It's going to be interwoven with poetry and all other like activist work. But I really think the more that I was putting it out to academic publishers, the more I was like, this isn't who I want to read it. Because if you my initial pull to do that, right? As like most academics, I'm gonna switch to the flower painting hangout space, by the way. The pull of doing that in the first place is because it was still early years of COVID. I was under the naive impression that I was gonna actually try to get a tenure track job. Even though I already knew, right? I knew that like 2% of academics get a tenure track job. I was under the naive impression that I was going to be able to try that. And guess what? That's not going to happen. It's just I guess all the stars didn't align in the way that my naive dissertation writing ass thought that they might. So now that that's off the table, I'm just focusing on. Oh, because I guess I didn't explain this. But basically, if you're going to try to for tenure, you need a book published with an academic press. But in doing that process, that means that your work isn't accessible to the public anymore. Because odds are good, it's going to be written in a way that's for academics, which inherently makes it not accessible to the public, right? Because it's full of jargon. It's probably not going to be read by the general public. And so, honestly, it's kind of been an enormous blessing to like realize not only would that have been a waste of my time because it wouldn't have reached people to help them in the way that I know that I want to, but it's giving me like a whole new path to tread. So it's a challenge at the same time, y'all know. Especially as a hyperlexic autist, because that's what makes my writing, I think, weird in comparison to like traditional academics. Well, yeah, and it's like who is? Like you have to be a specialist in like any one area to really like pick up what any one academic press is usually putting down. Because they're usually like Ivy League presses, you know, it's like Harvard or like University of Chicago or what University of California, shit like that. So, anyway, it's just weird like rethinking all of that. And so my TikTok content creation's been a part of that, but also like trying to now find like a general press when I know nothing about that because I just have never put any stake into it. So that's like a part of this journey, as well as of course the Twitch and stuff, and just like blending all the shit I do. But it's like a wild time. I mean, and on top of of course SB 83 ruining my chances of being in academia because it threatens all of my potential of doing critical work. Because fascism does that. Fascism doesn't want critical work to be put out. So it does everything it possibly can to destroy it. I don't know. It's a wild time. But we gotta find a way, as I think folks were talking about the other night. It was like Zoff was mentioning it. Like we were talking about the idea of ideas shouldn't be owned. And it's like, yeah, of course. But we need to find a way so that the people that have the skill sets that in the process need to be shared and taught to the people that want them, which is like research and writing and stuff. We need to find a way so that all of us can still survive at the same time. And it's like, how do we do that? Like, truly, there's got to be a way. I mean, I know folks have been talking about this kind of stuff for a little while, but as it goes, trying to find new ways to live within a deeply inequitable structure is a challenge. And it truly is. Yeah, universal basic income Star Trek economy. That's true. I saw, did you all see? Where is it? In the UK, There's like a study they're gonna do where like they're gonna give 30 people like $1,400 every month. Did you see that? Everyone commenting on it was like, that's not enough. But also, like, I mean, depending on how much your flat is, because I'm assuming in the UK that's probably what it's called. Maybe that would be like at least the absolute bare minimum. I don't know. But yeah, I could definitely get behind that. I don't know. I was joking recently too, like, it's just hard to I don't know what people don't get about the fact that like we all should just be distributing the hoarded wealth. Like money is just made up and we deserve to have the made up shit because there's just really no excuse for us to not have any of the things that we need. Like not enough people think about that. I think more people are still thinking about it than ever before, but they really don't think about it. I know, I wish that we had that here also. It just shouldn't be so hard. Like the priorities are just fucked if you ask me. That one COVID payment we got helped so much. The stimulus payments really did help me too. I was thinking recently too, like right when I moved into this place that's like a little bit less expensive than my last place, like it would be nice if we got another payment, but obviously a part of the reason why they ended the emergency order is also to get us off their back for that, I'm sure. Not that they even gave us, because when was the last payment? It was a long time ago. It was like at least a year ago, right? Because I didn't even get a payment since before I finished my PhD. So that was at least like 2021 was the last one, right? The wild thing is all of those dollars and pounds and what is that, liras? Are for the most part just numbers on a screen. Exactly. Yeah. It's literally, I mean, it's all fucking made up, dude. Like it's all made up. And it's like it just sucks. It's like there's truly no excuse. There's no excuse for all of us not having what we need because it's made up. The more that people forget that, the more that they can rationalize us not having what we need. And it's fucking bullshit. There's no actual reason for it. We don't have to stop people from taking stuff from Walmart. Yeah. Like honestly, full stop, fuck Walmart. I think the scary part is hypothetically, by what power mechanism would you redistribute wealth? The only legal way is through politics, and they're working for the rich people. And if you do it legally, that is dangerous, or illegally, that is dangerous. And there's a massive political shift. Who would rule if not the rich people? How would they gain power, and what they are evil to? So I'm going to answer that strategically. So first of all, we would take it from them. That's the way. There's no like there's no actual reason why the people that have hoarded the billions and billions and billions actually have it. Like they have it legally, but only because the current legal system is unjust. So like they have more like it's like hundreds of times someone could spend in a single lifetime. Like there's no actual legitimate reason they should have it. So because the legal system is unjust, that just only further proof that we need to also dismantle the entire legal system. Like, once you begin to understand that the current legal system is unjust, it becomes easier to imagine a future in which it's actually different. There's infinitely more of us than there are of the people hoarding the wealth. As well as, you know, as Candy was talking about the other day, and many people have for like years now, there's no literal reason. I mean, there's nothing stopping us truly, besides of course the distance that wealth provides you. That like there's like 100 companies that are creating basically all almost I mean at least the majority of environmental injustice and racism like that keeps that in motion. It's a small portion of the public and those people have addresses. There's never been actual like so think about how bad things are right now and how much better the world could be. That's really just my answer to the bottom part. Like there's never been any rule or reason to why the richest people allegedly rule.
Like they're not ruling because they're the best or the best equipped. They're ruling because they've throughout history been the most exploitative and the most malicious. So in my opinion, based off of everything I've ever read, like we would only benefit. Like so that's really what I believe in response. You can't dismantle the system via the system. Sure, of course. Yeah, that's why even though of course like voting can be a part of it, it's never going to do it on its own. Like that's why like you surely can't entirely outvote fascism. That's not how it works. We wouldn't have a monopolized two-party system if that was actually how it worked. Because if you believe that we can outvote on injustice, you're already missing the point that the system itself is unjust. Trump gave one, and then Biden, I think, one for 1,600, and then the child tax credit that was given. Yeah, I think there was three. Because when I went to look to see like how many we got, I saw that there was three. I could barely remember also as an advance, but oh yeah, okay, yeah, because I forgot about that too. That's such bullshit. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just always bogus whenever like someone trained into the logics of the current system try to go around saying that like change is slow, and it's like, dude, you realize that like every decision that's ever been made in an institution was a human decision, and that like we've never had an ability to make change faster. Like there's nothing set in stone or like immovable about anything that's ever been created. We can change everything because it was once created in multiple decisions by humans. The only thing, like, whenever we talk about human made things as if they're unchangeable, that's just a form of social control. There's always a way to make something better. There's always a way to make something so that it actually gives us justice. It's just been made so that it doesn't. And that's just a fact. Like, and we know that because if you look at how something was built, every legal decision that's ever been made was made by basically a single group of people that decided because they wanted to hoard everything and because they wanted to control the public to not. It's just that simple. Like that's why they do everything they possibly can to make sure that people don't know history because it becomes clear that that's what's happened if we see it. That's why they do everything they can to ban books. That's why they're trying to eliminate forms of information. That's why they're flattening everything. That's why they make everything so divisive, because it's a distraction to have us fight over things that don't matter as much. That keeps us from understanding how much power we actually have. It's just how it's always worked. It's fucked up, but it's true. Like that's why it's like they're the people that are richest are literally like quite literally committing to the climate apocalypse instead of giving up the wealth they have. Like, and I don't know if that's because they also believe that the system is like unmovable because they've actually been socialized into believing that or what. I think they're honestly just they're unwilling to give it up because they've had it for generations and generations. And they actually don't care if we all die because they think that they won't or they just don't care because they think that they can colonize Mars or whatever. But joke's on them because they fucking can't. It's impossible. They're not going to do that. It's hilarious how fast they approve military budgets. Yeah. I mean, and as I've been like thinking about more, I mean, just obviously since my master's in general, but like the amount of just like media landscape that upholds like the militarized society. I mean, even Sontag talked about this when we were reading more of Illness and Metaphor yesterday. Like the way that language of weapons and war are like built into our medical systems to describe like the war against cancer, etc. But really like war language is built into everything. Like this type of ideology, like it ultimately a white supremacist colonial capitalist one, is built in everything we have. That's why the language is just copy and pasted into all aspects of our lives. Because the more that we can internalize that kind of like material or militarized type of understanding of things, the easier it is for us to take for granted like the overall system of power that is unjust and is deeply inequitable. Twinkle wants to do laundry again. Actually, I have laundry in there and I need to move it from the washer to the dryer now that I think about it. So maybe she's being helpful. Are you reminding me that I need to do laundry? Thank you. Twinkle is more helpful than I realize, I think. I don't know about y'all. Do any of y'all have pets? Twinkle literally will be like I'll be laying in bed in the morning just like scrolling and she'll like be meowing at me and I'm like, "Oh, is it time for me to wake up? Should I stop scrolling and actually go wake up and be in the living room with you?" It sucks. I guess y'all probably don't know. I'm actually allergic to cats, so I take allergy pills every day and like I leave like basically the one room just for me. So, unfortunately, Twinkle can't lounge with me in the bed cuz I'm too sneezy. But it means she's very helpful. Oh yeah, they want a dog. I had a dog growing up. I never used to be allergic to dogs. Um, but then I feel like basically it flipped where I was like allergic to cats when I was a kid, and then I had a dog, and then it switched. And now I'm like allergic to most dogs. Still, well, I guess it didn't switch because I'm still allergic to cats. Never mind. I just stopped caring about being allergic to cats though. And but yeah, I don't know, it sucks. That's another thing that's been weird to think about since COVID, to be honest. Because, like, the only, like, other being that I live with is, like, this thing that I'm allergic to. And so I just take allergy pills and, like, I'm just like, "Hello, Twinkle. Thank you for living with us. Like, thanks for being in our house, but I'm allergic to your existence." Like, emotional support, health threat, basically. Especially because I have a history of severe allergies, so her being here, if I, if one day allergies go seriously awry, is actually no good, but it's worth it right now. While it's not. Hmm. Huh. All right, y'all. I'm getting kind of sleepy. I think I'm gonna finish. So, like I said, I started the Queer Ultimatum episode, or not episode. The rest of like the second and third drops of the episodes, and I like stopped because I realized what time it was. Like, three-fourths of the way through the last episode before the reunion, and I'm still fiending for it. We finished all the poems early because I didn't grab as many. I grabbed like, I think one less, but I think there was still good conversation about it though. Hopefully the talks of like relationships and COVID were like thought provoking for you. I think, like I said, it pairs well with like my overall research and just like our understandings of COVID and relationships, but also like especially late in life realize autists and relationships because of everything that we know. So hopefully that was thought provoking. If you missed it, it'll be on my Twitch. So check that out if you want at least. Also, of course, the last Friday poetry as well. More backstory, more autism poems than this. At least I mean they're all autism poems because obviously as an autist, every poem is an autism poem, but more overtly talking about autism in poems last week. So check that out too. But I'm gonna stay hydrated. I'm gonna watch the rest of Queer Ultimatum because it's pulling on all my heartstrings. And I'll see you all tomorrow for horror shorts. Like I said, I picked out like 30 of them. Everyone drink water. Ed the water person. Like I said, I'm so glad that the stickers actually are like the size I wanted them to be now. Okay, so everyone on TikTok that couldn't see what I was talking about the other day, this is like what the bottle does. It's like I'm not here. It's invisible. You can see the rest of the painting. I love it. It's fucking awesome. It's like the green screen effect. I didn't even know that that was something that would happen, so it's a nice surprise for me. But yes, if you like spooky stuff, come check out the Twitch tomorrow. Oh, nice. Oh, well. To our benefit. Hopefully you can plug your phone back in quickly. But yeah, I was just saying tomorrow, of course, is Horror Shorts night, so check back. I picked way better ones than the ones last week. Those were, like I said, I think easily, like I did a couple runs of Horror Shorts just like in early days, even earlier days of the Twitch, even though the Twitch is still super new. And oh yeah. Yeah, send it to me if you remember. The ones that I watched other than Oh, okay, I haven't watched any of the ones on TikTok. I like considered it, but I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of like stubborn about it for no reason. So if you find any that are good, just always send them my way. All the ones I got are from YouTube. I think it's just because it's easy because they're all put into like the watch later playlist or whatever. Oh no shit. Okay, I'll follow you back. Yeah, so I mean, how can you did I there's gotta be a way that you can like send it to me on Instagram, right? I don't know, there's gotta be a way. But yeah, I picked out like 30 better ones. At least I'm presuming that they're better because like I said the other night, they're not all made by ACM, so they must be better. Okay. If anything, what's your username on TikTok? The mask is always so sad. It really does remind me of The Mask from that movie, The Mask with Jim Carrey. Oh, okay, cool. All right, I'll just add you on there then. But yeah, if you like spooky shit, check out tomorrow. We'll be here watching the spooky shit, rating them out of 5. If you want a little preview, we got the ones from last week. Moving into week 2. I feel like I got like a crust in my eye or something. So you got the little sneak peek of what to expect. But yeah, we watch the horror shorts are like usually I'm looking for them like under 5 minutes or around 5 minutes, and then we rate them out of 5. But yeah, I'll do it as soon as we get off here so I don't forget. All right, let's see if there's anyone else on here that we could raid. So for anyone on TikTok, it says no rateable channels available for your channel, so I guess not. Never mind. I guess we can't raid every day. Or we gotta find, do y'all know of anyone that we might raid? I don't know what is in my eye. It doesn't feel like an eyelash. It feels like it's like a crust. Do y'all know of anyone we might raid? Because I can't even like look. If I'm not like following someone that we already might raid. Nez Cardinality? Oh, for sure, okay. Let me see what that is. What kind of stuff do they do? Dragon Warrior Randomizer. Speed running. Oh, nice, okay. Alright, we're gonna raid them. Raid started. Y'all are quick. We're becoming seasoned raiders. Raid now. Alright. Thanks again for hanging out. If you like horror, short, spooky shit, come on over tomorrow. But no pressure, as always. Never demanded, always appreciated. Thanks for hanging out, listening to some art. I'll see y'all around. We all deserve better. Drink some water, eat some snacks. Maybe I'll see you over in this, I forget what their name is already. Nez Cardinality. Watching, what kind of game? I don't even remember. Have a good night or day. I'll see you all around. How do I get down? There we go.